Hello everybody and welcome to day 5 of AP Appreciation Week. My name's John Stovald from Black Coffee and I'm joined by Nick Dunnett from ITESOFT.
Hi everybody, welcome along. I hope you've enjoyed the time at this conference so far and well done for still being here on day 5.
I'm sure it's been great, and I know there's been a whole raft of webinars and presentations and so on and so forth that's gone on over the course of the week. The theme for the day is the new world, and I think we're probably in for most of us in living memory in a real moment of change as to what that can look like with everything that's going on. Before we get into that though, Nick, would you just like to give a quick introduction to yourself and to ITESOFT?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, my name is Nick Dunnett and I'm the Managing Director for ITESOFT in the UK. ITESOFT is a French company and we're headquartered in the south of France, down near Montpellier. We've been around since 1984. And we look to support customers in their digital transformation, making sure that in everything we do, we give them a real obvious and clear return on investment for what they're doing. And we do that through making sure that everything we do for our customers helps them by being smarter, faster and safer. So we let them have more intelligent technology, working in a way that keeps them safe in what they're doing, prevents fraud, detects fraud in advance where possible, and allows them to evolve and develop. And I think all of those are really important at this time. As for me personally, I've been with the business for over 10 years now. Prior to that, I worked as a consultant, so my background is in IT and looking at how processes can be evolved within organisations and using IT to support that. And I've started at ITESOFT working on the professional services side and have been looking after the UK operation for the past 5 or 6 years now.
Fantastic, thank you. I suppose just a very quick word, as I know quite a lot of the people that will be watching this will have come across me in the past. Yes, I worked with ITESOFT for about 7 years. Marketing manager there. I've now gone away and set up my own consultancy, which is about helping companies tell their story and build their brand. So if those of you out there who are wondering why did he introduce himself as Black Coffee, that'll be why. So Nick, you've touched on it and I've touched on it already. COVID-19, we hadn't explicitly said the words. Definitely a time of change. I think it's a time that businesses all around the world are struggling to perhaps see what the future will bring over the coming weeks, months, and potentially even years. We heard Boris Johnson say this just the other day. You know, we're working on the basis that there will be an end to this, but there could potentially not. And I think, you know, when we're looking at that, businesses are looking at it and thinking, well, how can we prepare and protect and cover ourselves if the new normal does constitute a large amount of things like remote working? For you guys over there at ITESOFT, with your customers and, you know, what we've seen over the last few weeks, you know, what's that impact been like for yourselves?
Yeah, so we've obviously seen it. We work with a vast number of customers across the whole, I guess, gamut of the economy, and we've seen, you know, some of those, you know, companies like Lidl, where volumes have grown considerably in terms of their invoice processing. We've seen numbers of companies where things are continuing much the same, and, you know, obviously we've also got customers in those industry sectors, construction, aviation, you know, entertainment, where the past couple of months have been really tough in terms of what they're doing. So I think what's been key for us and for our customers has been by providing something that's been in a digital format for them and already helping them through some of the stages of their digital transformation. We've been able to help them continue to offer what they do and continue to run their business at least from an accounts payable perspective, whilst they've had people working remotely. So what we saw probably in the first week to 10 days, we had a big spike in calls from our customers as they looked to us to help them to just rework some of their business processes to make sure that they got things optimized for that remote working. The other big thing we've seen has been a change in invoice reception patterns. So we had a large number of invoices coming into our platforms historically, that were still coming in as paper, that people were still scanning. Mm-hmm. In a lockdown situation where nobody's in the office or people don't want to go to the office, your suppliers still want paying.
Yeah, this is true.
This has probably been the best way of getting people to switch to email if they hadn't been previously. I know I touched on Lidl earlier. They had a very, very low email level of supplier invoices for their not for their core food, but for the rest of their business primarily. And they had just about they just sort of started a program of trying to help move people to it because they knew it would be beneficial having automated their processes. But they were at about 2 or 3% of their invoices only coming through email. They're now above 80%.
Goodness me.
So they're seeing a huge benefit from that as well. And especially for someone like that, where actually their real focus has been making sure that people can get food, and not wanting to have to worry about what's going on in the back office. Yeah. Equally, if you can't pay your supplier, the farmer isn't going to send you the food. You've got to keep it working. So it's been really good for them to be able to do that.
Yeah, I was. It's interesting because I think you sort of referenced different sectors there and the impact that's been felt across them. And I was reading a piece just a couple of days ago, and it was around technology adoption within the NHS, and the industry reckoning is that the NHS has taken about 10 years worth of steps forward in terms of their technology adoption in the last 6 weeks, which is a pretty drastic change in an industry that was oftentimes bogged down with sort of bureaucracy and paper.
No, absolutely. And in fact, to help our customers, we offered every single one of our customers that didn't have it the ability to turn on an email capture option for them without any charge at this moment. And obviously a number of customers have taken that up, and including one of our UK NHS customers who hadn't had that option previously and obviously leapt at the chance to take it. So we were delighted to offer that.
Yeah, which is only going to have done them, or any business that took that on is only going to have done them the world of good. And hopefully we do come out the other side of this, and yes, it might be a new world, but hopefully these businesses that have taken these steps forward can continue that and maintain that afterwards as well, and not sort of slip back to other ways of doing things.
No, absolutely. And I think probably the other important thing to remember, and as we start to look to what's going to happen next, going through a digital transformation process is a journey, and organizations should remember that. When you have a situation like this, it's very easy to go, when you're kind of getting through it, suddenly go, oh, well, we need to do everything immediately. We know everybody's at different places in that journey already, and I think it's important to remember that when it comes to looking at the best way to go forward and think, okay, where were the main pain points that we had? We can't solve everything instantly, but where were those main pain points, and how can we address those quickly so that we can not have to suffer those in the future, and then look, after that at adding additional elements to it.
So if we just look over the last sort of handful of weeks, I mean, I say it's the last handful, what are we now, week 7, week 8 of this sort of, lockdown happening? I know we're just starting to see some easing of it, with people being told, if you can't work from home, then go back into the office, and I think companies just starting to figure out how they can do that. But from the ITESOFT perspective, or maybe more specifically from your customers' perspective, are there any sort of key lessons that you have seen that have been learnt over the course of this sort of 6, 7, 8 week period?
Yeah, so I guess there's probably three that I think it's probably worth talking about. One, we've touched on it, switching to electronic invoicing has been really important for people. If you can't have people turning up in the office to open the post, deal with it, process it, you can't do it. So allowing that to happen, and obviously the quickest and easiest way of moving to that process is to go to email. Yes, there are exchanges available from an invoicing platform type options. There's full EDI, direct. All of those things are great, but they take time to get going and set up. Email is essentially instantaneous, so you can at least receive the invoices, and actually even if your process is still 100% manual, at least you've got it, and that is a big change that I think is probably the key first thing we've seen, and we've talked about the numbers already there. I think the second thing is that people will need to look at and have looked at and readjusted their processes. So when you're all in a location, in an office, bits of paper can be walked around from one place to another, conversations can be shouted across the office at people to check everything's okay. We all know it's happened, invoices can be hidden in drawers.
Don't want to pay that one just yet. We'll just pop that in there for a week or two. Yeah.
So, I think what it's shown is that people need to have flexibility in their processes, that they've got in place to allow them to adapt. Hopefully we won't have another situation akin to this, but something come along. We had the banking crisis a few years back. We had 9/11 prior to that. Big shocks that change things happen. And they tend to happen more often than we think they're going to happen. So having an adaptable process, that you can change quickly and easily, I think is really important. And even actually for smaller things, businesses are changing all the time and evolving. They're opening new offices, they're expanding, they're taking things over, they're selling things off. All of that change is happening, and they've got to be able to adapt. But I think this has really brought that home. And then finally, I think the sort of third point I'd say is it's brought yet more and yet new risk to people. I've noticed that I've had a lot of emails in my spam filter that are offering me PPE equipment that I really need right now, which makes it different to get those from the usual. More recently, I've also had quite a lot coming in offering me business loans, and how they'll manage to get me a business loan, and all of that kind of thing. And I think so there is a new risk comes along whenever there's something like this. And I think in an accounts payable world, when you move from all being together in the office to a decentralized working from home approach, there is also the risk of just the historic fraudulent invoices that came through, non-purchase order invoices that are now, that potentially get slightly less attention paid to them. There are other bigger things happening right now. And so that risk is there and is enhanced in this situation. So making sure people can kind of, look at that risk and adapt to it is also, I guess, the third key point of things.
And I think that there's probably an element that comes with the processing or the processes side of that as well. As you said, when everybody's in an office together, things can be discussed very quickly, very easily by shouting across a desk or whatever it may be. But in a remote scenario, that non-official layer of protection maybe is probably lessened and opens up another chance for something to sneak through that may otherwise not have done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm probably biased on this anyway, being from my background, from that digitalization and automation background, but it feeds through into everything that I do even to this day. And, I firmly believe that if we weren't already in a digital world, we sure as heck will be now. And that people need to embrace that and start working with that in mind. You know, with that thought process there, what would be, you know, your recommendation over there at ITESOFT for a company who they may already have done a little bit of digitalization, or they may be sat there now tearing their hair out wishing they had done it, but you know, what would you recommend to people in those sorts of positions, and you know, from where you're seeing your customers go?
Yeah, so I think, again, you know, you're right, the entire sort of P2P process is ripe for digitalization, from the capture of the documents, from an invoicing perspective, from the raising of purchase orders and requisitioning, from supplier portals. All of those areas, I think, are part of the journey that should be looked at carefully. I think, like I said earlier, you know, in this situation, the important is to look at where you are in your journey already. So what have you done? You know, have you got suppliers delivering invoices to you via email or not? You know, are you already with a nice automated platform, but actually putting a supplier portal on the front end of it to, you know, reduce the number of incoming phone calls you get from your suppliers just going, have you got my invoice? Where's my invoice? You know, that maybe that's where you're at in the process. Maybe you're you know, you're looking at the procurement piece now. So I think that first thing is to have a look at that whole process and go, okay, well, what have we done? What have we not done? And then to go for those bits that we haven't done, what is it that actually, if we look back at these last few weeks, would have given us the most benefit? Okay, because that's the thing you should do first. And again, it doesn't actually particularly matter which of those elements that is at this point, because that's dependent on where you're at in your journey. But I think that's probably the thing to do, you know, and we break this down, I guess, we break the whole sort of P2P process into about 8 different steps that you can go through to look at all of these different things. And I think that's important, you know, looking at turning it into an electronic receipt of an invoice, being able to turn all of your invoices into a digital format. So if you're still getting the paper ones, there will still be some, and they'll possibly start coming back again. You know, making sure you can do that, because that allows you to move them around the business more efficiently. Having a process in place for managing that, workflowing those around the business electronically is an important element to it. Having supplier portals in place so that you can interact electronically directly with your suppliers around any questions or queries that there might be. Looking at analytics, so you can layer over all of this, you know, where are we doing things efficiently, where are we not doing things as well as we could be, how can we improve ourselves to get better. And then the procurement piece itself, you know, how much of what we spend is being officially ordered in advance. Everything obviously is ordered. You've got to pick the phone up, you've got to talk to someone to get something. How much of that is going through a purchase requisitioning type process? And then what is that process that you've got? You know, is it a fairly simple, I'd like to buy this product from this supplier, signed off by my manager, because is it within budget or not? To a full-blown procurement type process where catalog purchasing, punch outs, you know, and centralized buying teams are giving maximum benefit from the purchasing that's happening across the business. And so it's looking at all of those areas and saying, well, where are we in that journey? What have we done? What should we do more of? And where can we see that we will get real benefit based on what's just happened?
Yeah, if people still have to be remote or whatever that sort of ends up looking like.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, running through each element of that, to all intents and purposes, is again, it's going back to that digital way of working, digital exchanges with suppliers, whether that's through procurement, whether that's through receipting invoices, whether that's through supplier portals offering options for communications that are digital rather than phone. And I think that's an interesting one as well. It's that idea of, if people are remote working, how many of them are actually going to continue to pick up the phone as often as they maybe do in an office? it's a lot easier to ignore it when you're at home and you've got a VoIP system and you just stick it on mute on the background of your laptop. So that digital exchange with suppliers at any of those steps seems to be what you keep sort of referencing back to. So if you sort of take that element, what are the sort of the key challenges that people face there, and what is it that ITESOFT would advise or you would advise?
So you're absolutely right. I think that is one of the key challenges, making sure that you can communicate. And I think the thing we will also see from this is, and we're seeing recommendations from the government at the moment, even for going back to work, that we look at varying our hours so that we're not all in the same place at the same time. Well, if you're not in the same place at the same time as the person you want to speak to, the phone doesn't help you anyway. So having it, moving that to a digital channel actually becomes more important because it allows you to communicate much more easily with people. And we do work in a globalized economy, and so often those people that we want to communicate with may not be in exactly the same situation that we're in. Different countries are going through this process at different times. So that whole digitalization is critical. For us, I think that the area that we recommend people look at first, if they've done nothing, is that accounts payable area. And we recommend it really for two reasons. One, it's entirely internal in its control. So you're not having to involve external parts. You haven't got to get your suppliers all on board to doing things. You can manage the business around what they're doing, and it gives control back to that area of the business, which is important and critical to do. So it's also the area where you can get a very obvious and very quick return for investment on it. You can see the benefits very rapidly. So putting an entire procurement process in place, building a team to have centralized buying will give huge benefit to a business, but it's not going to happen overnight because it requires understanding what you're buying, getting that team in place, finding the right people to buy it from, changing people's habits and processes, receiving your invoices. You're getting them now, you're paying them now. It's just doing it better and more efficiently.
Efficiently. Yeah, I think efficiency and flexibility probably go quite hand in hand when you're talking about these kind of processes. There needs to be benefit to the business when you're looking at sort of digitalization or that kind of thing. But flexibility to deal with extreme circumstances is something that sort of is granted as a result of looking at things like automation in a given department. For you guys over there, or probably for you more so for your customers, what sort of feedback or key things have you seen that have happened over the course of the last handful of weeks that highlights the benefits of having flexibility within your organization or within this particular sort of part of the business?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess, again, once you've captured the document, firstly, how's it coming into the business? That ability to take documents from multiple sources is key. We call it omnichannel capture to support that. So whether it's electronic, whether it's paper, whether it's EDI, whether it's email, what format is it when they're sending it in? Is it a PDF or is it something else? It becomes really important, firstly, and obviously we're seeing. Secondly, the area of importance, you're right, is that flexibility of business process. As people have had to change the way of working, as people have had to adapt to that, as maybe people within organizations have been furloughed, or people have been not working for a bit because they've been looking after children at home. So business processes and routing and so on and so forth has all needed to adapt. And as I said, we did receive quite a big increase right at the start of in our support department of calls from our customers just asking us to help them manipulate their processes a little bit to get them to work the way they needed them to with the changes that were happening at that point. And we saw a spike in the first week or 10 days, and then it was just back down to the normal level again.
Which highlights that flexibility beautifully, doesn't it? That you were able to do that for your customers that quickly.
Exactly, and that's the key here, really. You know, giving people that flexibility to make those changes rapidly is critical. You know, and our solution sits on the cloud, so you know we're able to do that for them, you know, all the time anyway. You know, and they get all the benefits of the cloud anyway. As new versions of the product come out, they get deployed automatically, so they're gaining all of that. But they also have that flexibility and that freedom to do that. And I think that's important. You know, that they look at things like that. And looking at going forward, I think what's also important for organisations is if they're looking at how to implement that flexibility that they want, is to actually take this as an opportunity to say, not let's just lift and shift. You know, this is the process we followed, it does this, and therefore it must always do this, but actually to say, how can we maximise the benefits of what we can get through using a digital process, so that we don't lock ourselves into some highly complicated, convoluted process, which the system can provide, but doesn't lend itself well, you know, to the flexibility you might need. And so looking at that is also important as part of the process for companies and customers.
Yeah, you mentioned risks there. You know, that risk of what's coming next, what might happen next, which is something that I think everybody's got to sort of come to grips with. And probably to a point, accept the fact that we don't necessarily know as well what might be around the corner. But you know, the subject of today's content with the APA is all around the new world. So again, asking from your perspective there, new worlds, new risks. What new risks is it that you're seeing coming through at the moment?
Yeah, so I think, you know, whether it's fraudulent type risk or whether it's risk mitigation due to compliance that we have to fulfill. So, you know, whether that's changes that are happening to legislation, making tax digital, duty to report here in the UK, for people that are operating in other parts of the world, you know, using the various different VAT regimes that exist, supporting that. What is a legal electronic invoice in a different country? Because everybody's got their own idea about that, and making sure all of that is supported. And so one of the things that we think is really important, one of the things that we ensure we deliver to all of our customers are a level of fraud detection, fraud prevention before you know, as the invoice is being processed through our system. So our aim is to look at those invoices and check for any obvious fraudulent issues before we release it through to your finance system and our customer systems for payment. Because once you paid it, yes, you can go through processes to get the money back, but it's slow, it's painful, and it's much easier to have the discussion and make sure you don't pay something you shouldn't do early before you pay it than later. So I think that, you know, that's really important to ensure, and something we offer to all of our customers, and we're able to use our history and experience about looking at the documents, both to look for, you know, fraudulent data that's on there, invalid VAT, you know, not the right bank account details, all that kind of stuff, but also to look at where documents have actually been digitally manipulated, and therefore hint at, you know, serious issues with them. So they've changed the bank account details to, someone's changed the bank account details on an invoice to being their own personal bank account details rather than the company's. If we're not careful, suddenly that goes through, someone pays it, you know, it's a valid invoice, we had the goods, everything was lovely, we just didn't pay company X, we paid person A, and they're very happy.
Yeah.
So it's really,
sorry, yeah, I mean, and you've mentioned it there, you know, it's that same concept as it is with the different VAT systems, isn't it, between clearance and you know, post audit. Actually, it's a lot easier to keep an eye on what's happening if it's going through a clearance process. It's that concept with the fraud. It's a lot easier to see what's going on if you're catching it before it's actually happened. The risk is reduced significantly.
Yes, yeah, there's an impact in that. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Well, yes, it does change it. It changes one type of fraud, but it doesn't change other types of fraud. So with a clearance environment, you tell company A tells the government that there's an invoice to their customer for this amount, but it doesn't say what it's for or anything like that. It doesn't need to, apart from the VAT rate that's associated with it, but it doesn't actually say what product, goods or services were included. So you still need the original invoice to make sure that you're paying for what you needed, what you actually got. So it just changes what that nature of that fraud could be. Okay, because obviously, don't have to have provided the goods, but the invoice has been through the government, so it must be all right. So like everything, as soon as you a process to control and manage things in a different way, someone will come up with a way of getting around it.
There's always someone, isn't there?
Absolutely.
Well, it's important to keep in front as best as you can.
Exactly.
So look, I know we're sort of running short of time here. I think it's been a really good chat. Really enjoyed hearing where you guys have been over the last few weeks and what's been going on with your customers, and what they're seeing and how you've been able to sort of help and support them with that. Before we do wrap up, is there anything you'd like to share from the IT perspective about ITESOFT perspective about your business vision and where you guys are planning on going in this new world?
Just one thing I'll pick up on that I've touched on but not really gone into much detail around. So just to talk a little bit around the importance of that digitalization of the document and extracting the right data. So we've touched on it from a fraud perspective, from a process perspective. All of this only works if the data that you've got in the first place is the right data. And if we can't get that from the invoices that we're receiving into the system, we've had it. And I think that's an area where we at ITESOFT are spending a huge amount of time and effort on it. Our cloud solution, STREAMLINE for Invoices, gives customers a guaranteed level of 85%, so we can ensure that we get a minimum level of that. We don't have obviously any customers below that level. Currently our customer base are averaging 92.5%. Okay, so that increase even from 85 to 92 means we've almost halved the manual effort involved from where we're promising to where we're actually achieving. And our best customers are achieving into the 96-97% range. So again, we're halving yet again the amount of manual effort they've got to do. So dramatic savings in manual keying workload, which is the boring bit, is there through that. But not only that, of course, it means that everything else is smoother and easier because we're giving customers the right data and the system has got the right data immediately. And our focus and our aim eventually is to get that 96, 90 up to 100. That's where we would love to get to. It's going to take a bit. But again, that benefit of being in the cloud is that every time we get a bit better, all of our customers immediately see the benefit. So everybody benefits as things get better, which is what we feel is really important for our customers.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you very much. As I say, time is short with these sorts of things, and I'm pretty sure there's probably a whole raft of things we could have carried on going on into talking about. I guess from my perspective, the takeaway there is, look, we are looking at a new world. It's a digital world. Digitalization is going to become so important to businesses to allow them to continue to work and trade as they want to make the most success out of digitalizing a process. It's about the data. It's about how much quality data you're able to get into your system to really see those benefits further through. Have you got any final words at all, Nick?
I think just to wish everyone that they're able to stay safe as this continues, and to thank everyone for joining us today.
Yep, and same from me. Everybody stay safe. Thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed the Accounts Payable Association Appreciation Week. We'll speak to you all soon.